that she's somewhere safe right now and with the kids. But I mean, could she event? Could she just taken off? I don't know. But if somebody has her and they're not safe, like I want them back now.
Love stories usually begin with hope. They promise safety, stability, and the idea that after enough heartbreak, happiness will finally stay. When a woman has survived a difficult childhood, failed relationships, and years of putting everyone else first, the dream of finding the one can feel like rescue, a fresh start, a future where fear no longer has a place. That's what this looked like from the outside. A beautiful wedding, a smiling bride, family gathered close, children laughing in the background, vows exchanged with trembling voices and tear-filled eyes. Nothing about that day suggested danger. Nothing warned that before the sun rose again, a life would be lost inside the very home meant to protect her. But sometimes the most dangerous moments arrive wrapped in celebration. What happens when jealousy hides behind devotion? When control is mistaken for love? When the person who promises to protect you becomes the one you need protection from? And how does a marriage meant to last a lifetime collapse into violence in just a few hours? This is not just a story about a crime. It's a story about trust, warning signs, and a woman who believed she had finally found peace, only to have it taken from her on the night she said, "I do." Tonight we step into a wedding that ended before it truly began, and uncover how a dream turned into a nightmare before morning. She had waited a long time for this moment. For Tina Antwistle, life had never been simple. She grew up in a home marked by abuse, emotional, physical, and psychological. Her childhood taught her how to survive, not how to feel safe. Like many children raised in chaos, Tina learned early how to take care of others before herself. And when she became a mother, that instinct only grew stronger. As a single mom, Tina worked hard to give her children stability. She moved away from her hometown, hoping distance would also mean peace. In the small town of Jervis, New York, she began again. Slowly, her siblings followed. One by one, her family reunited around her. She found a job, a modest home, a sense of belonging. For the first time, life felt calm. Romance, however, was another story. Tina had loved before, but those relationships had ended in disappointment. Some carried emotional scars. Others reinforced the belief that love often came with pain. Still, she held on to hope. People who knew her describe her as warm, generous, and deeply loyal. Tina was the kind of person who fed everyone, who opened her home to friends and neighbors, who made family out of anyone who needed one. She believed in love, even when love hadn't always believed in her. That belief is what made her notice the man next door. Dele lived nearby. He was quiet, soft-spoken, and attentive. Born in Ecuador, he also had family in Jervis and understood the importance of close-knit support. At first, their connection was simple. He would see Tina hauling garbage cans, shoveling snow, managing everything on her own. He offered to help. She declined. Tina prided herself on independence. She had built her life without relying on anyone. But Louis didn't push. He waited. What changed everything was the children. Louis was gentle with them, patient. He didn't see Tina as a single mom with baggage. He saw a family. He went to parks, zoos, ball games. He made time. He showed up. For Tina, that mattered more than flowers or words. She had always said that if her children loved someone, that person couldn't be all bad. And the kids adored Louis. Still, Tina was cautious. Kindness can feel unfamiliar when you've lived with cruelty. Trust doesn't come easily after years of harm. But slowly, Louis became part of her world. Friends noticed how affectionate they were, how they held hands, how Tina smiled differently around him. For the first time, it looked like she wasn't just surviving. She was happy. Louis proposed on Valentine's Day after 2 years together. Tina said yes. They learned they were expecting a child shortly after. A baby born not from obligation or fear, but from love. Tina was ecstatic. Louis, who had never had children of his own, was proud. Their daughter Jessica was born in January. 2 months later, they planned a wedding that reflected who Tina was. Simple, intimate, handmade, and filled with family. She didn't want white. She chose a champagne pink dress, believing white was for first-time brides, and tradition mattered to her. Her sisters helped craft decorations by hand. They drank wine, laughed, argued, and dreamed together. Tina wasn't just planning a wedding, she was building a future. But not everyone was completely convinced. A few close friends noticed small things. Louis could be jealous. Not violent, not explosive, but watchful. comments here and there, questions that lingered a little too long. Tina brushed it off. Jealousy was framed as love, possessiveness as passion. She had endured far worse before. Compared to her past, this felt manageable, safe even. On March 28, 1998, Tina walked down the aisle. She cried the entire ceremony. Tears of relief, tears of joy, tears of belief that she had finally reached the place she'd been fighting toward her entire life. Family filled the church. The same pastor who would soon deliver her eulogy stood before them, unaware of what was coming. They danced, they laughed, they celebrated. Tina didn't want the night to end, so the party continued back at the house. Music played in multiple languages. Kids ran through the rooms. Wine flowed. It felt like community, like love. But beneath the laughter, tension was growing. A small moment, Tina playfully trying to set up a friend with one of Lewis's cousins, sparked something darker. Lewis grew upset, jealous, hurt. Tina noticed the shift. She didn't want to argue in front of everyone. She suggested they talk upstairs. That was the last calm decision she ever made. Because behind that bedroom door, the fairy tale cracked. And what happened next would turn the happiest day of Tina Antwistle's life into its final one. Upstairs, away from the music and the laughter, the air changed. Those downstairs assumed it was a normal argument. Newlyweds fight. Emotions run high. Stress, jealousy, exhaustion, nothing that couldn't be talked through. Tina had handled conflict before. She was strong, outspoken, not afraid to stand her ground. No one imagined that what was happening behind that closed door was anything more than words. But then the banging started. At first it was muffled. Thuds that could have been furniture shifting, footsteps, raised voices. Then it grew louder, sharper. Panic crept in quietly, the way it always does before chaos explodes. Tina's sister felt it immediately, that gut instinct she would later describe as impossible to ignore. She went upstairs and tried the bedroom door. Locked. That alone was wrong. Tina never locked her door. Not with family in the house. Not with kids running everywhere. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. She began pounding on the door, calling Tina's name. When the door finally opened, the scene inside shattered every illusion of safety. Blood. Everywhere. Tina was on the floor, her champagne pink wedding dress soaked through, the color no longer soft or romantic, but dark, heavy, violent. A moment for reality to settle, for the brain to accept what the eyes were seeing. Louis stood near the bathroom doorway. His white shirt was soaked in blood. In his hand was a knife. The room was already stained red. Blood on the floor, on the walls, on the bed. Tina was on the ground, barely conscious, her body torn apart by multiple stab wounds. Defensive injuries covered her hands and arms. She had fought hard. Her sister screamed. Another sibling rushed in. Someone tried to stop the bleeding, but there were too many wounds. Too much blood. Tina gasped, confused, terrified, slipping in and out of awareness. Her newborn daughter slept peacefully in the crib just feet away. Tina tried to reach her. One leg pushed weakly toward the crib. Her eyes kept drifting back to her baby. Panic flickered through the pain. She didn't understand what was happening, only that her children were near and she couldn't protect them. Her sister grabbed her hand. She told Tina not to worry, that the kids would be taken care of, that she wasn't alone. That reassurance mattered. A single tear slipped from Tina's eye, and then she was gone. Her wedding dress, champagne pink only hours earlier, was now dark, heavy, soaked with blood. 10 hours after saying "I do," Tina Antwistle was dead. Outside, chaos exploded. Louis's brother Angel ran from the house. Tina's brother Frank chased him down the street, screaming, rage, confusion. No one knew who was responsible. No one understood what they had just witnessed. Then a body fell from the second-floor bathroom window. It was Louis. He landed hard, unconscious, broken, bleeding. The groom survived the fall. Sirens followed quickly. Police cars flooded the dead-end street. Blue and red lights washed over the house where a wedding had just taken place. Inside, responders moved carefully through the carnage. Blood trailed down the staircase. Shards of glass lay near the shower. The bedroom told the story clearly. This was not an accident. This was not a momentary loss of control. This was a sustained, violent attack. Tina had been stabbed again and again. Chest, abdomen, face, back. One wound pierced her eye. The pattern told investigators everything they needed to know. Whoever attacked her intended to kill her. Louis was taken to the hospital under guard. His injuries were serious but not life-threatening. When police told him his wife was dead, his response was flat. "Oh, No sobbing, no disbelief, no shock, just quiet. Detectives noticed it immediately. They asked him what happened. Louis said they argued. He said Tina insulted him. He said she hurt his feelings. He claimed she pulled the knife first, that he only stabbed her twice while defending himself. The medical evidence destroyed that story. 2 stabs don't explain dozens of wounds. Defensive injuries don't come from an attacker holding a blade for the first time. This was rage. This was control snapping. This was jealousy turning lethal. Witnesses recalled Louis growing upset earlier that night, accusing Tina of flirting, of disrespect, of embarrassing him. At some point during the argument, Tina removed her wedding ring and threw it. She told him to leave, to get out of her house. That moment mattered. Tina was strong, independent, unafraid to stand her ground. And for a man driven by insecurity and jealousy, rejection was unbearable. Investigators believe that was when Louis lost control. He knew where Tina kept a knife. He opened it. He threatened her. And when she didn't submit, he attacked. Afterward, as family members struggled to save Tina, Louis fled, climbing through the bathroom window like a coward, leaving his wife bleeding to death beside their child. At the hospital, police placed him under arrest for second-degree murder. The town of Port Jervis fell silent. It was the first murder in years, and it happened in the most unthinkable place, a wedding night in front of family with children in the house. 4 days later, Tina was buried. The same pastor who married her delivered her eulogy. The same people who danced with her now stood crying beside her coffin. Her children would never hear her voice again. Louis later pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to 20 years to life. He still claimed he never meant to hurt her. The family never believed him. And maybe the most haunting truth of all is this: Tina escaped violence her entire life, only to be killed by the man who promised to protect her. In the days after the murder, Port Jervis felt different. Windows stayed dark longer at night. Conversations dropped to whispers. A town that rarely locked its doors was suddenly afraid of what could happen behind them. Tina Antwistle's death shattered the illusion of safety. Friends recalled moments of jealousy that once seemed harmless. Comments brushed off as insecurity. Jokes that carried a sharp edge. Accusations over nothing. Possessiveness disguised as devotion. No one wanted to believe it meant something worse. But in hindsight, the warning signs were there. Experts explained how jealousy can become lethal when paired with entitlement, when a partner believes love equals ownership, when control feels necessary to maintain identity. Tina was not submissive. She had survived abuse before. She knew how to stand her ground, and that strength may have sealed her fate. When she threw the ring and told Louis to leave, it wasn't just rejection, it was defiance. It was her reclaiming control in a moment when he felt it slipping away. For someone driven by fear of abandonment, that moment can be catastrophic. The trial never came. Louis pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, avoiding the risk of a longer sentence. He was sentenced to 20 years to life. The courtroom stayed silent as the words were spoken. There was no sense of victory, only finality. Tina's family sat together, grieving not only the loss of a sister, a daughter, a friend, but the loss of who she was becoming. A woman who had finally believed she was safe. A mother who had built a future with hope instead of fear. Her children faced a life defined by absence. They would grow up knowing their mother through photographs, stories, and the memories of people who loved her. Her youngest would never know her at all. Psychologists call what the family experienced compound trauma. Grief layered with shock, betrayal, and unanswered questions. How could someone who seemed so gentle become so violent? How could love turn into murder in a single night? The truth is uncomfortable. Violence doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it stands at the altar and promises forever. Tina's story became a warning whispered from one woman to another, that jealousy is not proof of love, that control is not protection, and that danger can exist even in places that feel safest. Her death changed Port Jervis. It changed her family, and it changed the way people understood intimate violence, not as something distant or rare, but as something that can erupt suddenly, devastatingly, without warning. In the end, Louis would spend his life behind bars, but Tina paid the price first, and no sentence could ever equal what was taken from her. The prison walls closed in around Louis Dele, but for Tina Antwistle's family, there was no closure waiting on the other side. Years passed. Birthdays came and went. Holidays arrived with an empty chair that never stopped hurting. Tina's name was spoken carefully in her children's presence. They were raised on fragments, stories of her laugh, stories of how she loved fiercely, stories of how she always put others first, but no story could explain why she died. Psychologists say crimes like this don't begin with knives. They begin with entitlement, with the quiet belief that love gives ownership, that rejection is humiliation, that losing control is worse than losing everything. On that wedding night, Louis didn't just lose his temper, he lost his illusion of control. And when Tina refused to bend, refused to stay silent, refused to belong to him in the way he demanded, violence became his answer. Investigators would later say that the speed of the attack suggested rage, but the number of wounds proved intent. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't panic. This was domination carried out to its final consequence. Tina never stopped fighting, even as she bled, even as her strength failed, even as her child slept nearby, unaware that her mother was dying only feet away. That detail haunted everyone who worked the case. A newborn sleeping peacefully while a life was stolen beside her. It became the image no one could forget. Louis continued to insist he never meant to kill Tina, that he lost control, that he was overwhelmed by emotion. But courts don't sentence feelings, they sentence actions, and his actions spoke clearly. He stabbed, he fled, he survived. Tina did not. At Sing Sing Correctional Facility, Louis began his sentence among men who had also crossed lines they could never return from. Inside those walls, time moves differently. Days blur, years stack on top of each other. Regret, if it comes, arrives too late to matter. Outside, Tina's children grew. They learned to walk without her holding their hands, learned to speak without her voice guiding them, learned to live with a truth no child should carry. Her family became their shield. Aunts, uncles, grandparents, siblings, all stepping in where Tina no longer could. But even love can't replace a mother. Experts say intimate partner homicide often follows a predictable pattern: escalation, isolation, control, and finally violence. The warning signs are often dismissed because they don't look like danger at first. Jealousy mistaken for devotion, possessiveness confused with protection, anger excused as stress. Tina's story is not rare. It is repeated in different houses, different towns, different names, over and over again. And that's what makes it terrifying. This wasn't a stranger in the dark. This wasn't a masked intruder. This was a husband, a neighbor, a man trusted with her life, a man who promised forever. When the pastor delivered Tina's funeral service, he stood in the same place he had just days earlier, smiling as he pronounced her married. The contrast was unbearable. Love and death separated by 4 days. For those who loved Tina, time never truly healed the wound. It only taught them how to carry it. They remember her not as a victim, but as a fighter, a woman who survived hardship, raised her children, and believed she deserved happiness, even if it cost her everything. And maybe that's the hardest truth of all. Sometimes doing everything right still isn't enough. If this story left you unsettled, it should. Because cases like Tina Antwistle's don't belong to the past. They are happening now, quietly, behind closed doors, masked as love. If you see the signs, don't ignore them. If you feel unsafe, trust that instinct. If someone you love is trapped, speak up. And if you're drawn to stories like this, stories that expose the darkness people hide behind smiles and vows, stay with this channel. Because remembering victims like Tina is one way to make sure they are never erased. And sometimes telling the truth is the only justice left.